Again, we're partway through a staff meeting Thursday, September 29th, 2022. Martin just said something genius. I didn't capture it. Luke has been saying genius stuff for the past 25 minutes. So, I mean, go away. I don't care. I don't want you. How do we put this on? It's not the whole ring on everything thing. Not really always a good thing. All right. So, look, okay. So you want people to be, you want people to help people develop the agency to say no.
Right.
And so how can they do that?
So the way I'm approaching it with this material, at least, is that I'm trying to put them in control of their root level incentives. So, you know, the very things that make it possible to exist. If you're dependent on somebody else for those things, then you have the incentive to keep those other parties amenable to continue providing those things. Right? And that's going to influence every other incentive you have. It's going to compromise your whole incentive system. So what I'm contending is that we should, just like our ancestors did, have the ability to at least meet those needs ourselves. It doesn't mean we have to actively do that. Doesn't mean that has to be how we spend our time and our days, but we need to have the competence to do it.
Okay, so you need competence for sufficient independence to be able to exercise agency in your relations to, is it the words of others, thoughts of others?
Your interactions with others, yeah.
Interactions with others, okay.
A lot of what people mistake for cooperation right now isn't cooperation. It's compliance, it's coercion.
That's
because they can't say no.
right.
Anywhere you can't say no, you're not cooperating.
I don't think I've got that anywhere. That's really good. I wouldn't have approached it that way. That's very smart.
So my whole point is, how do I preserve the opportunity for cooperation? And this material is what I came up with to answer that question.
Voluntary is not as easy as people think.
No.
It's so logically obvious. But not obvious. So just to serialize, what would be to the right of what you're saying now? So if you go from submissive Christianity to tolerant Buddhism to self-aware, it's rather the wrong term, to stoicism, to what you're advocating, right? You're a little bit further along in stoicism, because you're not just saying how to ignore or judge. You're saying how to become competent enough to do so, and how to disagree, which is a more political, it's a more socio-political. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. I'm sorry, I see a pattern. I'm just trying to put a label on it. So
it's the competence that affords for scale.
Yeah, exactly. The problem with stoicism is that you're not providing counter signaling. Whereas saying no, you are. Right, and where I don't know, probably my sort of world would be, I'm responsible for not only saying no, but correcting you.
The
What?
logical end of that spectrum is longism. Every man a king.
Is what ism?
Longism
Spell it for
from
me.
Huey Long. Every man
Oh,
a king.
I don't know what that is. That's why I don't know what it is. So, yeah, exactly. Every man a king, exactly, or every man. Traditionally, the word is every man a sovereign. But okay, so that so now I have a framework for understanding. Now that makes sense. I actually really like that because it's intermediary step between I'm responsible for myself and I'm responsible for everything.
Yeah, I was just going to make that point, is that ability to say no is that transition between
Yes,
self and everything else.
yes. So I like that. That's really good.
So
So
it could have been far easier to write. I could have just wrote "say no" on a page. If people could comprehend that, that would have saved me the writing of every other word I wrote.
We tried that, I think, in the 90s with drugs, and it didn't work.
Yeah, I'm willing to learn from other examples. So
that was priceless.
I think the point is that there are costs to saying no,
Yes,
and what you're doing is reducing those costs.
yes,
correct.
or reminding people that paying those costs is accessible to all of us.
Still, some more than others.
Oh yeah, there's always going to be some that are more capable than others, but you know. There's a bundle of skills, right? We're not born with instincts that accomplish everything that a human being needs to accomplish, right? I mean, we have to learn.
God,
We have to learn how to walk. We have to learn how to talk, things like that, right? We're not born with those instincts. We're born with instincts that drive us to learn those things, but we're not born with the actual competencies of those, right?
Correct.
So there's a set of skills that exists as a transition from infancy to childhood. And what I'm doing is I'm defining another set of skills that transitions us from childhood to adulthood, but that are essential to us being human. Without them, we are something less than human. We are pets.
Our children are getting born underdeveloped compared to every other mammal,
Right.
so
Yes.
that the brain could even pass through the birth canal.
Right, exactly.
Not only are they not provided, they're actually infantilized. Who's that? Oh, I was talking same woman. Well, men, women, the things have changed and women have more choices now, so men have to change too. And I'm like, well, I think you're not missing the point, but the men are going to change in an unanticipated direction. Right, and which is what's happening, right? So if women have greater choices, men will choose greater choices too, which is what they're doing.
That we're ignoring that those options for women exist only because men are under compulsion to provide them.
Mm-hmm. So,
Reciprocally.
so you see all. I don't know how many guys are working the manosphere today versus a year ago, or I'm just aware of it. But it's fucking terrifying. You look better with that lighting, Luke. I mean, I don't know who's doing your makeup, but it's a good job. Yeah, fuck, nothing. God damn it. Anyway, so How hard is it to teach people to say no?
My kid already does it. He just says no all the time.
Well, I mean, that's part of being the age he is. That doesn't mean it.
I'm just playing with you. They have to be competent enough to say no, because like Martin said, saying no comes with the consequences of saying no.
I'm asking for a reason because what you see psychology started out with is the feminine bias in Freud, who's a Jew, which is a bias toward conformity.
Yes. Well, I see there are people who want to deny their emotions, and then there are people who want to live in them. And it's like, you actually have to conquer them. You just have to know why you feel something and then move on from it.
Yes.
And no one's addressing that. You're supposed to inform your instincts. That's what your intuition is for. Your
Well, I
logic
mean, but so the counter reaction is no. I like living in fields.
That's okay. You can be a dependent or a submissive, like a woman or a child. You can abide by those rules.
But how are you going to stop me from exercising my political rights to demand that I can live in a world of fields and social construction?
If you cause harm, we will harm you.
We'll get back to, okay, well, we got to be cops. We got to be the adults in the room.
Yes. Well, I mean, we proved to our family, like we will also save them from harm. That's like keeping your kid from banging their heads on things when they're falling, but letting them fall.
Well, they're falling pretty hard right now, I tell you. Damn.
They are crashing.
So what did I brought up? I brought up the manosphere. Okay, I'll start with the manosphere, and then I brought up the example of her saying women adapting. I countered with, well, you know, the incentive after you're 21, your incentive to adapt to a person of the opposite sex decreases rapidly.
Yes.
And your incentive to satisfy yourself and rigidify increases rapidly.
Yes.
So, you know, what you really want to do is when you have the maximum incentive to come together, when you have the maximum incentive to adapt to one another, meaning putting the other person first. You know, and I just come back to the traditional families had it right.
I think we should create drift.
You should what?
Men should adapt to groups of men and then pick from the women. So you should be a little bit older than your wife.
Yeah,
Because that forces the women towards more responsibility.
right.
Through time.
I was trying to make, you just brought in two new points. I was simply trying to make the point that we burn our adaptive.
Yes, on frivolous shit going backwards.
Right.
We infantilize through the period that you are maximally adaptive, and you should be being under duress so that you adapt to the limits of your being,
right.
Not collapse into the child that you are.
Right. And so that's what's happening, of course, is then people are going out in the world, and the world is not showing them very nice things. So you brought up, what was the second? So how did you respond? You said, oh, you want them to be older. I said, well, that's a natural thing simply because men mature later, right? I mean, women start, but they also stop earlier and they're less mature, right?
Yes.
Men start later and they take longer to mature. So
Right.
You're going to see that 4-year thing consistently. I mean, at least. Right.
And I'm saying pushing it to 7 to 10 is going to be better for everyone.
I can't tell. I don't have any way to say. You're again
making a guess.
Well, I know that above 10 it starts to go negative. Right.
Yes.
So
yes.
So you're probably right there, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. I would say the younger the woman is, maybe that's more true.
Well, you don't want to parent your partner. So there's a space at which it gets too big where now you become a parent and your partner is dependent instead of moving up. Right.
I remember Alora saying to me frequently during the first couple of years of marriages, well, you know, you've just done more shit than me. It's just way easier if I just ask you. Right. I mean, it's like, even then I'd had a starter marriage, so I'd already blown up, you know, a marriage. He says, well, you know, it's like, I just know what not to do wrong. Right. I know, that's all I know. Right. And so I learned out of my starter marriage, 2 years, whatever it was, you know, and I also married better my second time. Right. I mean, I got nothing, there's nothing like going to a proper fellow old New England family lawyer, a woman, same class, same background, and saying, Kurt, you married the wrong side of the tracks. And that's now you're paying for it.
So they say not compatible, incompatible.
Well, I mean, there's a middle class family, but I don't have middle class. I don't have middle class. I have, so because yeah, we tend to confuse economic class with cultural class, right? We tend to do that all. So anyway, so I can't remember her name at that, but I remember her vividly, and I remember her body posture when she's telling me, you married the wrong side of the tracks. Right. And so anyway, Laura was very clear about this, you know. Of course, she's also like the most sane kind of woman you can have, right? I mean, so, but she would be very clear about how much of an advantage it was. I felt it was an advantage because I was really aware, I was extremely conscious of my delayed social development through until I was like, I just felt like it took me to be 25, you know, somewhere in there, 24, 25, before like my head was on straight. I don't know how to describe it.
Well, it was later for me.
Yeah, same.
I probably had more. I mean, I had a lot of responsibility. I mean, by the time I was 23, I was helping run a nearly $100 million business, right? So, you know, I had a lot of, it's like fucking fire hose, right? Guy, you're 20, you're just out of college, and like everybody you work with is in their 40s or 50s, right? And it's like a fire hose of information at you. That's probably why, but it's just for me, I remember having a very hard time fitting into that workplace socially. I mean, I had to work at it every day. Anyway, so yeah, that gap is probably true. I know that my grandparents were 11 years, and that seemed to be a bit much. Though I have my friend Toddy's, they're 15 years apart, and it's fucking perfect. Well, because he's like me, virtually 14, which is probably. No, Luke laughs, Martin smiles, and Brandon just shakes his head at the fucking obvious. All right, you can't get a laugh out of you guys today for anything. All right, so all right, so I was trying to take this. Okay, so it's dating. Okay, it's the feminine side of psychology. All right, so here's the thing. I'm trying to develop a pathway to ask Luke the question of what's wrong with psychology. Now, remember, there's two cases here: psychiatry, psychology, and therapy. Right, but we forget that it's psychiatry, psychology, therapy, and education. Right, I mean, it's the education is theoretically preventive, and religion is part of that education, right? That's what's teaching habituation. So we have this huge long stream of preventative to curative, right? And psychiatry is technically when something's physically wrong, right? Psychology is when something's behaviorally wrong. Therapy is when you just need a little remedial education, right? Education is where they're trying to prepare you to function, right? And religion is trying to teach the animal inside, right, how to behave. So my argument has always been that this is a continuing education problem.
You can tell we're going in the wrong direction.
We're going in the wrong direction.
People are starting to pile up in therapy. That's becoming a norm, right? And then they start kicking out into the other. That's a problem.
So the fact that I'm able to keep in mind what I'm talking about for this long and I haven't been able to do that for a year. I must be getting better because over the past year, it's like, what the fuck was I talking about? I try to do this series of questions. I'm like, I forgot what the fuck I was doing. But today I remember. Anyway, so Luke, I'm trying to get to ask you is what's wrong with psychology. What I don't know what you said. You said psychology. I don't know if you mean it as therapy. I don't know if you mean it as education. I don't know. Where do you mean in there? What's wrong that that you are trying to set right?
Part of what's wrong is that the lines between them have blurred so much, right? I mean, we're medicating everybody for everything.
Yeah.
And that's not everything needs medication.
Not everything is. I certainly do. I've been on OCD meds since I was 25.
Well, then in a lot of ways, I think what we're calling effects causes. And so we're
correct.
Trying to address the effects, thinking that they're causes, that they're the underlying causes, and they're just not.
So what I'm trying to ask you is this a side effect of the pseudoscience of nature versus nurture?
Yeah, it is, and it also is an effect of some of the thing I've been talking about lately about our loss or our abandoning the feedback from nature, right? Or the proxies of the feedback from nature.
Okay,
right?
You got to unpack that because the audience.
Sure. Technology, civilization is a technology. Technology serves to introduce space between our choices and nature's feedback consequences for our choices, right?
Insulates us, removes us from something.
Right. And that's
effectively creates a longer feedback loop that means we have to crash all of civilization.
Right. Exactly. It means we don't die immediately from our poor choices.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, that's what all this stuff does for us. The problem is some of nature's feedback is required in order for us to not be dysfunctional, in order for us to be healthy organisms, just like every other animal on the planet. So nature's feedback is required.
But Luke, you're trying to deprive me of social construction of my magical thinking so that I can live in my emotions and believe that I'm not part of reality anymore.
Yes.
Or like when I was a child.
Right. I am trying to help you grow up. And one of the
people want to grow up. Are you telling me people want to grow up?
No, and that's part of the problem is we've created this structure of dependency that almost inhibits our ability to grow up, or in a lot of ways does inhibit our ability to grow up. And so until we address that structure of dependency, we're never going to get people to grow up.
Yeah, people want to grow up only when the rewards of childhood run out.
Right.
There we go.
And we keep extending that childhood further and further into what ought to be adulthood, because we keep increasing this gap between nature's feedback and our choices. And we're not introducing proxies in there to account for that gap and to account for that feedback.
So it's the false promise of the end of scarcity applied to every fucking thing in the universe.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So
but it's not even just a human thing. You go to the zoo and they've been dealing with this stuff for decades now. That's why they keep trying to make enclosures more accurately reflect the animal's natural environments. It's because without that, the animal is anxious and dysfunctional in that captured space. We're in a captured space. We are captured animals. That's what domestication is.
I just think I had this thought before when somebody said, "You remember the movie Dark City, where the aliens go up night, they inject everybody with or something, and the people shut down. They wake up in the morning with different memories, and the planet's been reorganized." Well, I was thinking of if you want a zoo, right? What you really want is the animals to go to bed at night, to wake up in the morning, and the fucking thing's been arranged, right? So that they have novelty, right? Because the novelty is what keeps them from going nuts. Because what makes people stop from going nuts is novelty. And so what you want to do is, and if you take an enclosure, even if you just made it out of hexagons, right? You could morph the spatial area for these things to different areas and then throw them amusing toys like small children to chase around and eat. No, I didn't mean that really. But I mean, although I did think about it, and there are certain parts of India, they seem to find that fairly interesting. They voluntarily Did I really say that too? No. Okay. So the number of
We are the
morons.
nicer people.
What?
We are the nicer people. I tell people that. You can look around the world for terrible things that are going on. They're going on right now.
Yeah. So, but anyway, to get to your point, Luke, is that yeah, people need they need change, right? They need novelty, change, experience in order to keep responding to the world, or they detach from it, right? Because that's what happens, right? People detach, and they can detach just because they constantly fail.
That change should come in maturation cycles that match with people, like moving through this place and
You're gonna have to unpack that.
with others. I mean, it's 3 to 4 years for an adoption curve.
Yes,
And like every 7 years, roughly, you're
a different person.
turning over a different thing. So every 7 years, you should be moving into a novel space inside of a cooperative endeavor with those around you, hopefully escalating in scale in your practice.
Is that why I kept trading up women to keep them all 25 years old?
That is why they do that.
Oh, it was only Alora where I stopped doing that. I didn't even realize I was doing it.
And I think part of that is that they aren't keeping up with that cycle. Your partner
Say that again.
up with that.
Who's
Part
they
of the
are?
reason why there's a drive to exchange like that is that your partner is not keeping up with that cycle. If they were
Right.
stepping into a new, novelty cycle as well,
Right.
they would maintain the appeal. Of
So
the
what you're
relationship.
saying is it's that we have a continuing education problem,
Yes.
right? We have a continuing education problem that really, I mean, that really we ought to look at the world as 7-year cycles all the way to 70. And we ought to figure out how to be helping people move through every 7-year cycle, something like that.
Roughly.
Well, what I got from is that those women are failing to stay 25.
Yeah, that's the other way.
I didn't get that, and I didn't get that. So explain. Fuck, you guys, you all laughed at the joke. He said it. You guys laughed at it. I didn't understand it.
We're giving Martin the opportunity to
Oh, I see.
walk you through it with holding your hand.
We know it's not something you ever learned.
Jesus, Luke. My balls hurt from that one. Virtual kick in the nuts.
It's not gonna be funny if I explain it, but it is that the women are failing to keep up being what you find desirable, which is
Oh, I see. Well, that's true.
5.
But back in the day, certainly my grandmothers, because they went through this, that you went to finishing school, right? If you wanted, right? But the thing is that there's also the reason you go to finishing school is not so that it's partly so you think you can catch a man. The real answer is so you know how to be a graceful little old lady, right? It's teaching you how to become graceful, because grace doesn't depreciate, even though fertility does, right? And so you want to teach grace. Now, so we've lost that word. We don't have the meaning of that word anymore, but it used to be part of the common vernacular. She has grace, which is the mature female expression of femininity.
We've lost all those, right?
We've lost them
Submission,
all.
grace, elegance, innocence, you pick them.
Right, it used to be they got degenerated into having class, and then it degenerated until it's not existent anymore. So it went from grace to class to whatever. It's like class is just a money thing. Grace is a culture thing.
Yeah.
It's just like, ugh. I remember we were touring, because Laura and I are quite educated in the arts. We were touring, and we hired this art historian to take us through some stuff in France. And she just stopped at one point and she says, You're Americans? And it's like, and of course this went on, and what she basically said is that you're so cultured. I said,
Right, you're not
it's
supposed to know this
it's not
stuff.
that there aren't cultured Americans, it's just that our uncultured people can afford to travel.
Right. But in the loss of all those attributes, we've also lost that filter for our terrible relationships, that circle of old lady fire that kept the crazies away from each other.
Ooh, elaborate on that, because I don't think that's obvious.
Right. So in the development of all of those traits and in the maturity of age, right, they become they take on that matriarch role in the family and in our relationships with them. Right. And so our potential suitors or potential spouses, things like that, would have to get through grandma. They'd
Yes.
have to get the approval of grandma before we could enter into that relationship. Right.
Mhm,
That doesn't happen anymore. That filter is gone.
mhm.
And we have terrible relationships without it.
That's true. It's because we don't have the skill to identify patterns in our potential mates. And we're so thrilled to actually get attention that we think it's a scarcity when it's actually not. I want to ask Brandon a question. Is your Luke, your mom's still alive, right?
Yes.
Yes. What's she like?
She's I mean, I love her to pieces. She's we grew up doing a lot of reading, so I'm always grateful for that. But she was also, she came of age in the 60s. She was born in the early 50s. So
Mhm.
so she has a lot of that, I don't know, that free love, push back against the
Yeah.
system type of thing going. So
Would you consider her classy? Would you
Yeah.
consider her graceful?
probably more graceful than classy.
Right, and that's the distinction I was trying to get to.
Yeah.
Right. And so my grandmother on my father's side was classy and graceful, right? But they had money,
Right.
right? I wouldn't consider my grandmother on my mother's side classy or graceful. I would consider her moral, kind and moral, right? And so the thing is that we've lost all these maturity vehicles, right? We're like, okay, now you're a special little flower. I'm going to throw you out into the world where you can become all you are naturally meant to be.
Right.
That's what I'm objecting to, and I'm saying that that's the consistent thread that they've imposed upon us, is that they've taken nurture as more important than nurture is more important, yet they're relying on nature. And they've said that you don't need disciplining into self-regulation that will allow you to be gentlemanly or graceful.
Yeah, we've all but abandoned that the limits on childhood's behavioral flexibility.
Mhm.
What they're saying is that state of nature is optimal. And so you should be nurtured into that state of nature instead of trained into
Correct.
being responsible.
Right. But that's why it's so important to have proxies for nature's feedback. Right. We don't want you to die in the process of getting you there. Right. So we want to keep the distance away from nature. We want to keep that gap, so that you can survive to become a productive, cooperative adult.
So here's the problem. Here's the underlying problem, is that we're now in a position of enough prosperity that the idiots can afford to go off and be infantile idiots, because there's enough of us that are adults that are still holding the world together.
They're working hard on changing that equation.
Right. And so they've worked hard to change that equation. So the question is, if you say, can we say to people, no, you need to learn how to be adults? We can. Should we and may we? Right. In other words, we know the problem. Our group, all of us here, we know the issues, right? We know how to solve them. We certainly can make life a continuing education, right? So that because we're living so long now, right? You need to have continuing education and adaptation. And we don't have the church to do that anymore, right? The economy doesn't do it anymore, and we live too fucking long. And we're not being taught the basics in religion and school or in norms anymore. We don't have the institutions for producing like nobility and a lower upper middle class, a lower upper class and an upper middle class who people are trying to imitate, because those people are now economically rotated, not intergenerationally rotated. So how we producing what I would call stoicism, and you would more proactive, I don't know what you call your just say no philosophy, but I mean, it's further up the chain. I would call what I do aristocracy, right? I mean, Arianism or aristocracy. And you've created a new thing in the middle, right? And so what do we do with the people who don't want to play the game? It's like that argument I said to Kevin McDonald and Ricardo Duchesne what's his name? Who's the Eastern European guy?
Sunik.
Sunik. I said, guys, we got nothing to sell to the opposite side because they've got exactly what they want.
We're telling people it's the only playable game. You can have any civilization you want under the culture of the natural law.
Okay, no, that's the second step, because you always jump a fucking head and you take the conversation ahead at the end of the goddamn story, but then we don't have the journey to the end of the story so that people can follow. So I'm gonna try to go back to asking the question again. I forgot it now that you made me fucking.
Sometimes the journey is rough. What I see happening in all of what we're doing is we're trying to reduce risk taking instead of increase it. And when you increase risk taking, you force liability and accountability into the chain because there's a lot of shit going wrong because people are making decisions.
Well, I mean,
and you correct them for those things.
Is that even true though? We want to do is we want to build a high trust, high quality society where people are continually evolved and happy and mindful. They want to maintain infantilism.
Sure.
My view is they're going to try to maintain infantilism until we've restored enough civilization that they want to imitate it as a civilization, instead of how it used to be, is that we were one civilization with the poor and the people who weren't poor, and they were trying to imitate them up the upper middle classes and upper classes. Everyone's trying to imitate upward. So we have to separate to do that. I don't know how to do it any other way, unless you say we're going to go kill them all. I mean, I'm okay with killing them all, honestly, but I mean, I am really, but I mean, I just prefer not to.
I don't.
They will refuse to change their worldview, or at least their way of thinking, until they start experiencing cost of it.
Correct.
So until that happens, I don't see how we could possibly talk to them, how we could offer them anything.
Well, that's okay. I'm asking Brandon to answer that question.
What we propose is to criminalize all of those instincts that would parasitize upon commons. Like, we should propose those in the places that these people are too, because they will find other ways to seek novelty if the ways they're seeking them now are being punished.
We
wouldn't even afford force arenas that degrade the value of people. Why should you be able to have a Tinder?
Yeah, but that's a consequence after those changes are already in place, but it's not an offer they're going to like.
In other words, they won't voluntarily accept these changes. They'll call it fascism or something.
Whatever.
Or oppression.
The changes, when you lay them out and someone reads them, if you say no, you are a child.
You're a bad person, actually.
Yeah, or a criminal who's giving everyone the benefit of the doubt. Here, you are a child, or you are a criminal. I mean that. That's not an opinion.
Okay, so let's take something off the table. I think you're right. Your statement is right, but that doesn't mean they won't resist, right?
They're gonna resist.
Okay, hold up. But let's say they are. Okay. The thing about the left is they have all these institutions, but what's their real number? 15%?
Maybe.
right? You know, my view is if we put this out there, all these reforms out there, that the people in the middle are going to choose our way.
Everyone who went, I hate politics, I'm never doing it again, which is half Americans,
Yes, is
are
going to
going to
choose.
go,
our
we
way.
want that.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what they're going to say when they read it.
And so,
Long as they have the reading comprehension to read it.
well, I mean, we may not be able to suppress the enemy's lying as fast as they can lie.
I think they've done a bang up job of whoever believes them still is broken and you can't save them. Either you got to drag them to bring them along with you, or you got to cut them loose.
Okay, but we can at least entertain the option that a majority, it's possible with the range of solutions we're providing to obtain a majority necessary to implement the law. Right.
I think so.
I've never believed that before. Ever. And I'm beginning to believe it. Because I just can't see how the middle is tolerating. They just hate it.
They don't want to fight, and they don't know how without overdoing it, meaning without fighting in a way that would be outwardly criminal. Like they don't have a means to do anything other than that. So they're just resentful and hostile, and they're keeping it inside.
And they still see themselves as far more dependent on the system than they need to be. So they can't say no. So a lot of it they're just going along with because they can't choose otherwise. They don't believe they can choose otherwise. That's what I mean by can't. They can.
Mm-hmm.
They've just never been taught that they can.
Mm-hmm.
There's no normative path to adulthood anymore. Our norms don't produce adults.
They don't want
Right.
you to have one.
Right. And it's an insanity right now. We're extending childhood into adulthood, but we're pushing adult responsibility further and further into childhood. It's the worst combination.
It's cruel.
It's
fucking
cruel. And it's absurd. And expecting any results other than what we're getting is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to double down.
Of course
They're
they
going
are.
to double down again next week.
No, again, because they want exactly those results that we're getting.
Right.
Yes.
Those in charge do, demonstrably.
I mean, it's like, I don't want to so much go there, but when you hear, what's his name? Schultz, not Schultz. This is a guy with the one world conspiracy guy. The World Economic Forum.
Oh, Schwab
says, we want you to, you're gonna own nothing and be happy. That's basically saying serfdom.
Right.
Yes.
That's what serfdom is.
Well, they see people.
You own nothing, you pay your taxes, you do production, we live off you, and you're happy with it. Well, of course, you have no agency, right? I mean,
Right.
I have no problem with some people want to be serfs. It does, but not everybody doesn't want to be serfs.
They can be serfs under an accountable agent.
Right.
These people are going to have serfs that no one, the children that they are unleashing into the world, no one is accountable for other than the children, and you can't even get restitution from them.
What happens what happens to those? The primary function of the work, of course, the first principle of it is to eliminate rent seeking, right? Parasitism, right? Falsehood, false promise, and the resulting of false promise is parasitism. So it's out prohibiting. The law's purpose is to generally do that because our law does most everything else. So now, what happens to the Schwabs of the world when they can't make money from rent seeking? They have to make it from returns on capital that benefit the public.
They have to use all that capital.
They have to, right? But
They have to put it to work.
now, but what's how does it change their view of the public? This is what I'm trying to get at. In other words,
It might not, but all the ways they would manipulate the public would be illegal. It would be criminal. I mean, we pursue them for doing what they're doing currently, which is coercing them, suggesting that they do these things, telling them that they will be happy without property, that you can eat bugs. I mean, I think they're just shit testing the thing all the way through. And how long are we gonna have to say they're gonna eat crickets before they're eating them? Few thousand more
Well,
times.
we know that's not gonna happen because we were right about the population problem. But we accidentally corrected the population problem, overcorrected the population program.
I'm not
Oh,
sure what's the next.
And, if things don't go right over the next 2 to 3 years, we're gonna seriously overcorrect the population problem. So, so the insight I have of late from basically listening to you guys and working on this is that I finally believe that it's possible to have a political solution. And I've never believed it before.
I have no idea how you got that from me, though.
Well, I didn't say it was probable. I said it was possible. It's a difference.
I mean, we're offering them graceful failure. They
I
should
said there was no possibility before. And now I think there's a possibility.
Yeah, but it's just graceful
I
failure.
want to fill the hanging trees. I want to dull the blades of the guillotines, right? I mean, I'm absolutely on that side. You know, I want to make us run out of 2x4s because we've used them to spit bodies on pikes. Okay, I want to do all that. I'm all for skull piles, but you know, if we can do it by simply political means, it's just, you know, it's just easier. I'm baiting Martin with that statement, and I'm not getting.
The question is, can we get all that we want by those means?
I don't know why not.
I don't want
Because
to
either-
compromise.
What?
I don't want to compromise at all. It's like you can
Well,
cooperate.
I don't
with
want to
somehow.
compromise. But I mean, the world's certainly going our direction.
It's gonna be worse. All the people that were scared about the backlash to the left going crazy are correct. It's
Yeah.
gonna be worse on the others. Obviously, you've been poking the people who have the violent capacity for this. You think, when's the next time you're gonna double down where they're gonna turn on you? And the authorities can't, even if what happens is the right responds in individual lunacy, like acts of violence and clustered violence, the authorities won't even be able to keep up with that.
No.
It'll turn into a nightmare here. And you will get the craziest from the backlash. You want that? You can have that.
Yeah,
That's
the thing
that's
is
do
that
nothing.
we know it. We know the escalation path is imitative, right? I mean,
course.
it's one thing if you have one guy makes the next guy, right? But if you get 10 events, it's going to rapidly turn into 1,000 events per week.
We have gotten one event, right? Over and over again, and they've been getting closer and closer together.
Yep.
Okay, what happens next is you get 2 events at once. And then people panic because now your attention is divided and those 2 things probably won't, right? They're not going to cohere, meaning someone's not going to be on the right side of both those things. Those are just
The
going
minute it goes
to
from single actors to 3 to 5 guys who
we're in
aren't,
big trouble. Yeah, because we can't make sense
or
anymore.
they're just guys in the same neighborhood have got enough. They haven't gone out and said shit on public media, you know, 'cause that's how they track people now, right? They're just.
There's no pattern prediction in there, meaning the algorithms now have to force the persistence that they see through time, meaning they have to also incentivize you to choose poorly in order to predict for you. As soon as you become unpredictable against this place under persistence against abundance, as soon as you become unpredictable against that, no one's predicting their way through the chaos that's coming. 0 people, 0 algorithms. You get the best you're getting right now, which is people who want to do this before the chaos starts. The real stuff. Before it's rational for regular people to do unreasonable things.
Mhm. Well, I don't know. We were getting there. We were getting there during the whole Antifa George Floyd conspiracy, man.
It's never gonna stop getting there faster. It'll never ever stop getting there faster until we do something that we're saying. Pick a thing. Start with one of them.
And my advice is first learn to grow up.
Yes, Christ.
Start there.
Start there.
Makes all the other things possible.
Well, the only people who listen to that advice are the ones who already want to grow up.
Yes.
And we're gonna win. Don't make us want to punish you when it's through. That's what
I don't know that I agree with that, because the paths to growing up are so obfuscated right now that a lot of people that want to don't know how to.
That's true.
So
They're gonna
the
get
people.
they're gonna
The
get
people that want to are finding their own ways there, but there's a lot of people out there that would easily choose growing up if they had a path to.
we're offering
Yeah,
graceful.
then you're not disagreeing with me. I'm saying
No, we're
people
not.
who already want to will listen. Well,
We
you
are-
have to show them how.
You guys are correct. We are offering graceful failure in a landscape where failure to catastrophe is the norm. You can have graceful failure upwards in this place.
Mhm.
Everywhere. And if you don't, like, you don't have people who are taking care of you. You don't have anything stable. This is you can risk, calculated risk. That's what you can do against this place. And we have set it up so people gamble against it. That is a mistake. We should be choosing, and we're not. We're choosing people who can't even choose.
I just. Ugh. We have in our minds the middle class majority culture that existed through a couple of decades ago, but what they've done to education, the average, I mean, if you watch these random interviews with people on the streets of New York and whatever,
No one's getting out of this without roughly boxing in the cities. Some way, city, state, actual walls, too many people, too dislike of kind, and a feedback loop that makes
well, I
them.
mean, I just think we need to have, we're gonna have to all need new passports, and it's gonna have to be at the local, the state, what we call the state level, city, state level.
Of course, but there's no reason we can't offer repatriation of humans that want to go elsewhere with funds. We already practice it
But
under the pandemic.
if we implemented this, how many people would leave the cities to move to, I mean, they're already doing it, right? Because they've killed all these cities. Immigrant cities, right? Turn them to shitholes.
There's no reason they should vote where they're going until they integrate. That's anyone from a city.
Well, I mean, but there's people that's like saying that everybody in a city, someplace like New York is a progressive. It's not.
Sure,
It's a
doesn't
huge,
matter.
right? The problem is you can't honestly test for it.
For what?
There's no way to honestly test for political affiliation.
Well, you can with revealed preference, not with stated preference.
I'm under the impression that the only thing you're choosing with your political affiliation is like the people you want in your proximity, and that you should choose with moving.
Right, but I'm saying, how do you let somebody in? Right, I mean, how do you know who to let in and who to keep out? Now, some people, you fucking look at them, I mean, it's pretty obvious, but I mean, you can't always tell.
Well, there's plethora of things you can test, like does their discussed sensitivity. If they don't get discussed, that they don't get to vote.
Yeah, but again, once you create a system of testing, you can create the opportunity to game the test. Right, so I mean, what you have to do is create tests that are complex enough that can't be gamed, right? Which we know a lot about, because
If the level of suppression of behavior in the commons is high enough, then they won't be able to
they won't
talk.
come. Yeah, that's actually the right answer.
Yeah,
So
make it unpalatable for them to be
just
there.
make it unpalatable for them to come.
One of the things I was hoping would eventually emerge out of all the digital currencies and the decentralized finance stuff is I would love to see like local currencies. And so in order to move into an area, you have to be able to create value in that area.
Not gonna happen.
Well, I know, but it would have been.
You want to see him solve the problem. That's what he's saying.
You can have, hold on, you can have a current, maybe a terminological problem. you can have a local token money.
We
In
should have
other
a
words-
local token economy.
Right, and you can have a local token economy, but your tokens have to be tradable to the broader market. And so as long as there's a clearance vehicle for local tokens to be done there.
Yeah.
This allows, there's a beautiful math to this, really. It's just like, so if you inflate this, you can take advantage of it until it normalizes, because there's a delay period. So you can play these games with it, which is why you want to have your own national currency. But at some point, the scale of your currency is so small that you actually your currency is in so little demand that it becomes price unstable. So there's a sort of this, I mean, it's a really hard to argue with the US dollar because it's fucking international, right? But that doesn't mean you can't have token money inside, and token money is subsidized. In other words, you can play all sorts of games with token money, which is what, food stamp cards and those kind of shit do, right? They basically function as token money because they're only spendable on certain things. But you can do the same thing with all sorts of ways. So
Right.
in the sense you mean it, yes.
Yeah.
When
So
we
like
say,
you can only buy property here with the token money.
right, I mean, that's it, right? I mean, so there's certain things it gives you control over the tokens, but the tokens have to be capable to convert into the
Right, yeah.
macro currency, into the currency. Thank you. I mean, I used to remember, because that's when I worked at the amusement park, right? We had tickets, right?
Yeah.
And so the ticket was how you got paid right? So if you came to my booth and played a game in my booth, right, I had the ticket. Well, the tickets were how the booth owner got paid by the entrance, right? The entrance fee, as an entrance fee. One of the most horrifying times of my life is when really hot girls were talking to me and I was doing the normal teenage boy thing of my 90% of my brain shutting off. And I gave them the change I gave them back was the wad instead of the change. They actually came back and they give it to me, which is, I'm living in a very Christian town, obviously. They actually came back and give it to me, but I was horrified. Like, what the fuck? What happened to the money? Never let pretty girls talk to you when you're doing business.
That's foreshadowing. That's foreshadowing.
What do you,
Foreshadowing, right? That's foreshadowing.
I don't get it. That's not.
Yeah, we know you don't get it. It's another one of those lessons you didn't learn.
Oh, you're such a dick.
That's what Brandon meant by foreshadowing.
Brett, how your friends treat you. They abuse our friends. The thing you get about abuse for friends is usually true and it's okay. Why is that? Whereas the abuse you get in the real world it's usually not true, right? It's not okay.
Abuse that's true will force you to laugh at yourself,
Yes, that's true.
right? So it forces you into the fool.
It costs you face. It doesn't cost you truth.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm just making fun. I'm not.
I know. I mean, I'm trying to elaborate on the virtue of male bonding through shit talking. I mean, it's just a fucking wonderful thing. I love it. And in Boston, I mean, Brandon's from there. I mean, the New England is the fucking world capital of shit talking. It's fucking believable.
It takes hours and hours and hours of adding value in proximity to one another before you have the license
To shit
to run
talk.
your mouth.
Yeah.
So that's what people are witnessing.
Anyway, fuck, Luke, you threw me off. I was going somewhere and now I'm completely freaking lost.
We were reigniting the economy with tokens,
Oh yeah.
local variety.
Well, I mean, this is something we'd all like, right? We'd all like to be able to influence local economies the way the fiat currency manages national or federal economies, right? There's value to be able to do this because we don't really want everybody to be forced into equal pricing for all things, right? There's all sorts of value.
Incentivize cooperation.
And it ensures disassociation.
Correct.
When everybody has the same token, then you can't say no just by denying them access to the token.
Yeah. There's all sorts of wonderful things you can do with it, right? My whole thing, even way back when, is to just give people cards with different kinds of money on it for rent and the basics, right? Right, that's fine, but just giving fucking money away just ends up in the fucking bank's hands again. It's like this goddamn trillions of dollars you printed just ends up in the goddamn stock market. I mean, my whole thing was pay down the fucking mortgages. You want to make everybody richer? Pay down fucking mortgages. Right? Just go around and just shit. If we just spent, it was like no, it was less, it was I can't remember. I did them, it's been too long. But in 2009, I figured out, I'm like, you pay off $250,000 of everybody's mortgage. What the fuck happens to everybody? Well, first of all, a lot of people don't have mortgages anymore. Right? And then second thing, people who have mortgages, they got way goddamn smaller mortgages. So everybody's got money. And then you say, well, we're at the bottom. We don't have, well, it was great. We just gave you fucking X on credit cards or X on the next house purchase and it's there for you, or a credit line or whatever. Fine. Doesn't make any difference. But you give it to people so that it isn't ending up in the fucking hands of the financial sector. Right? Because all you might as well be doing is saying, here, pass this block upstream, where the trillions of dollars end up in the market, inflating the markets, and now it's got to crash. So what's happened? Not only did the average guy not get his house, his net income increase permanently by decreasing his house mortgage, but also he's now we just destroyed his pension. Right? Pay down debt is forever. Paying down debts is permanently beneficial, like mortgage debts or credit cards is permanently beneficial, right? But giving people an extra $1,200, it sounds really good, but all it does is, it's like attaching a balloon to float up the economic tree.
Well, that was the point, because people that actually have money might start saying no.
When I think there's I agree with Martin, but I think there's a distinction in there, because you want to pay down debt on valuable goods or productive goods. You don't want to pay debt on consumption.
Correct.
Which is what the whole college thing is right now, because college is nothing but a consumer good right now. So paying down the student loan debt.
It's a trip to fucking adult Disney World.
Right.
Excuse to get high, party, have sex, and pretend you learned something. And you've just spent now your household, your ability to pay for a house and your first kid, if not your first two kids on it.
That's the
No
cost.
fucking reason.
Right. So you can't make people richer by paying down student debt, because they aren't getting richer by going to school.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Building wealth.
And it also allows you higher status in the officially sanctioned hierarchy.
Correct. Promotes credentialism.
Yes.
The big mafia.
I think did I tell you about this the other day, going into court and watching that poor guy in his early 30s? And his wife drags him in there every fucking week just so that
Oh yeah, she did say that.
he loses a day of work so that he can show up and the judge can tell him it's dismissed.
It's brutal.
I mean, I'm like, we got to stop this. It's all, he was just telling me that. And I was like, I'm like, you okay, man? Because he's like, he doesn't look right. He's like working class guy, right? He works at Pratt and Whitney, which is where they manufacture engines and shit like that, right? And that's what the blue collar guys do here. You get a job at Pratt and Whitney, and it's a good job. It's like what the white collar people do around here. They go to the fucking insurance companies, right? You get a grunt job at the insurance company. My ex-wife's been there her whole fucking life. Jesus Christ, hang me from a fucking pillar. Anyway, so this poor guy's sitting there, and he's white guy, early 30s, fit, good looking. His life is ruined, right? His life is absolutely ruined. And so he just doesn't look right. I'm like, you okay, man? He's like, yeah, just my wife does this. I just said, we got to stop this. He says, we got to stop this because this is got to stop. Meanwhile, you're going to have all these moms sitting around. I'm a single mom. I do it all. I'm a power trick. Meanwhile, the guy's fucking screwed.
The single moms are getting theirs now in the internet arena. I imagine that'll leak out into the real world. with some
Explain
swiftness.
that. So, because I didn't.
I mean, there are groups everywhere across social media networks designated to denigrating single moms, or rather exposing the way that single moms denigrate themselves
Yes.
and publicly, right?
Which is weird because I had Amanda, Veronica, and Lilia. Should I talk like that? Is that okay?
I don't know.
We had to, like, talk about the families I've plowed through. I mean, I guess.
You have to deal with the audience on that.
Okay. But I mean, I loved being a stepdad. You know, and the reason I like it better than being a real dad. And the reason for me is that you're not carrying, the women take it all. They take all their ownership of their kids. And you just provide these limits. Like, as long as I'm living here paying this, then you're not talking to your mom like that. And you got to do the man thing like once a month. Right. And the other thing is she's busy and right. There's no guilt transfer over parenting. Does that make sense? And so, you know, and I'm like, this is basically, I could pay for my own residence or I could pay for this one. And I tell her, you just got to make money to pay for your kids. And I only do that because they want to, you know, I don't want to, it keeps it reciprocal. Right.
Mhm.
I fucking loved it. I mean, essentially I have what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stepkids. You know?
You're illuminating the relationship arena in which a variety of fixes are necessary, not only because we live longer, but because we move more and we move through and consume people more, like just because we've been poorly trained, and we need transitory ways of stewarding good behavior regardless of the compatible relation that seems to be at the top of the hierarchy, right? If you're a stepdad, you actually have to be capable of being a dad. And that's probably untrue most of the time. Meaning not true. They're not fit fathers being put into the role of father. They don't want the responsibility. But the alleviation is of the accountability. The child's not yours, not your blood, and the mother is there. They fill that role because the father.
It ends up being a more traditional relationship, honestly.
Right.
Right. And I just like, and for me, the kids always seem to look up to me. So, and I'm not an asshole. I mean, in real life, I might be. I mean, in my online persona, I obviously try to be as an asshole as much as possible because I'm successful at it. But I mean, in real life, I guess I'm not as much an asshole. So, I mean, I got along with the kids great. I love them all. They're awesome. I keep track of them, you know. And
you don't have to, in that situation, you don't have to parent defensively.
You're not at a war.
Partner is not an opponent.
Yes, right. And what I felt like in under this feminist thing, it makes you the enemy.
Yes.
Because you're never doing enough. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. You know, I can do what I do, and I'm good at what I do, and I can do the dad part of things, which is limits. Right? I can provide limits. I can make sure everybody feels safe. I can handle hard problems. I can hang the TV on the wall and then drop it and break it and have to go buy another one. And yes, I did that. You know, it was really funny. It's a brick wall, and I put the expansion bolts in and the whole thing. And 2 hours later, it just comes fly. It's like jumped off the wall and smashed on the floor. I'm like, well, I guess I got to go buy another one now. So pull the bricks right out of the wall, right? I mean, anyway, so I can do all those things, and you know, and the thing is, it's like there's none of this guilt that the women can throw at you, and they don't even want to. So the problem is, are you getting a used and fucked up one? Well, I'm basically, for some reason, this doesn't bother me. Because it's just a way to make yourself valuable to the woman. In other words, if you're better than her priors, right, then you're just making yourself valuable. And so in every relationship, I just look at it as, how do I make her feel safe? Turns out it's pretty easy. Every woman slightly different, but they like it. So I don't know. I'm not really against the single motherhood mother thing for myself in a relationship.
Right.
But
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was gonna say a lot of that's though because of how you approach it, right? I mean, I wouldn't endorse it in general, just because
Yeah.
that's also where most of the abuse of children comes in, is from that step relationships. So
Okay. In other words, there's a lot of people take advantage of single mothers who get into that household and then cause abusive things. Is that what you're
yes,
saying?
yes,
Yeah. See, I like
yeah. So if the
Proximity.
parties are healthy, then it will be fantastic. If the parties are unhealthy,
unhealthy. It's not.
no model will work.
Yes.
Well, the reason why it's not recommended for men is because they are expected to invest in their stepchildren, and the man can at any point leave with the children and you'll never see them again, even if you've grown accustomed to them.
Yeah, I think of course, I probably have a very modern mentality because I've sort of been through this. And my attitude is, did I make them better off? The answer is always fucking yes. So there's no kid being harmed. The only bad thing is me leaving. But the other thing is the women who I've left behind me, they all marry up. In other words, they did better. Not than me, but I don't mean the means, but they married a guy that was good for them because they knew what a guy was good for them was. So I don't know. I think Luke's right. It just depends on what's going on there. But I would argue that, just like you're saying, Luke, it's possible to teach men how to be in relationships with single mothers. I'm watching your reaction to see if that passes the sniff test.
Well, it's possible to teach both men and women to be responsible adults,
Yes.
and then they're capable of those types of things. I think the more we do that, the less we have to worry about the existence of single mothers. So
Okay.
we'll partner better once we're adults.
Yeah. It's like but I don't see the incentive for traditional marriage surviving, except
But-
in the middle and upper classes. I just don't see it.
But that incentive is artificially removed
Explain.
because we're providing these possibilities like
Yes.
child support, welfare, that enables single motherhood.
Yes.
We
better.
don't have to provide those things.
It's better we provide them with the ability to be. It's easier to have your own trainer in a house that's with you to train you to the opposite sex. We're more alike than not if you have to spend 5 or 6 years with someone, right? To create some sort of compatibility and then move on. What we should be doing is leaving people better off at the end of any dissolving compatible relationship than we entered into one. And that should be the measure. Are you both better off, regardless of whether this dissolves now or not? Because catastrophe already dissolves relationships. People die, and there are single mothers because of that, right? So we have these spaces come up anyway, but they should come up in the catastrophes, not because we have set poor limits and disincentivized things like marriage. We shouldn't frame children as being a cost. Silly.
Right. Well, that's my biggest resistance against any kind of support of the transitional relationships is when kids are involved. The abandonment creates trauma. No matter how good the abandonment happens, it creates trauma.
Yes.
And so we're doing a disservice to children anytime we get into those kind of in and out relationships. So
Yeah, I think I've seen some data that's in children of parents that are unhappy together. If they stay together, the children are still better off.
Yes.
and I think it's a different dynamic than the type of trauma that's produced from a death, right? A death is not an abandonment in the same way that somebody actually walking out is an abandonment. So that's why I think widows do a lot better with their kids than the separate, the separation of the parents. So
We should deal with that trauma better too, because a lot of times it's not they chose someone better than you. It's they chose someone better for them than you. Like that, we are different things at different times and require different relations in order to meet
Oh, guys,
aims. And
I agree with you. What
Yeah.
you're doing is though, the argument sounds neutral and it's not. The answer is women are looking for too much from men in a relationship. Right? That's what's changed. And I don't know how to fix that.
Yes.
And so my view is that given that women are hyper consumption, hyper novelty seekers, and they change pretty dramatically every 6 or 7 years of their lives, and men are more linear in their development. And so when you look at that, I don't see men being able to supply. In other words, I don't understand the incentives for people to stay together when women are behaving like this. And I don't see women changing the behavior because it's their natural behavior.
When it harms the children, it should be punishable.
Right. So that's
Okay, so
really
when it harms the children, it should be punishable, and then that
Right.
forces men to put the limits on women.
okay.
and my incentive would always be the well-being of my children. Even if I was unhappy with other things, I would still invest in it as an investment in my children. So that would be my incentive in that situation.
Yeah, but I mean, again, you're high conscientious.
the,
That's what makes
fem-
us conservative.
the
Except for
female
Martin, I don't know what your deal is.
the female expectations of men are crazy today because they're for one informed by Judaism for women,
Yes.
and second because they're comparing against the baseline of being able to go into unproductive careers
Mhm.
due to affirmative action often and having welfare, having child support. And if we remove that artificial baseline, their expectation will have to adjust.
Would necessarily. Would remove the ability to weaponize, right, children in the courts.
It's really easy. I mean, everything you guys are talking about is easy to fix because
Yes.
it's all part of the legislative positive law of the 60s.
And it all helps children to fix it. This is not about, it's not about limiting the women. It's
That's
about
what they did, right?
making sure that you're not harming the children.
They changed the purpose of policy from the production of families, intergenerational families, emphasis on the commons necessary for the production of children, to the to individual sphere expression.
Mhm.
That's what they did, and they did it on purpose.
Sure.
They did it for hedonism,
At terrible cost.
at terrible cost.
Yeah, as you say, only value woman can provide to man that other man can provide is femininity. And what we see is all over the world where women actually need men, they're more feminine.
Yes,
It's what we can't do.
it's also just such a status thing. I mean, Jesus Christ, there's a guy walking on the fucking street in Moscow the other day, taking pictures of random fucking women. It's like it's fucking supermodel collection. They're just girls. They're ordinary Russian chicks, right? Now you can see some of the same thing in New York because it's New York and it's, but I mean, Jesus, and like they are proud of femininity.
Well, part of that is Slavic genetics.
Yes, but they're proud of it. They're proud of being feminine. What the fuck? Femininity is just as powerful as dominance. It's just you do it the opposite way. It's seduction versus coercion. I mean, it's fucking. I love being seduced. Please seduce me more. I'm happy to do shit for you around the house if I mean get hugs, kisses, and more. Right? I mean, it. We're just. It's fucking awesome.
So there's nothing wrong with seduction if it's true promise.
Yeah. Fucking A, man. I remember telling what girl, woman, I can't separate all the fucking women in my life. So I would just say, what do you want me to do? I'm like, I want you to pour yourself a glass of wine, sit at the counter and talk to me while I'm making dinner. That's what I want you to do. Because you know what? Femininity is great. I remember talking to Amy, I was dating Amy. She said, you don't understand, Amy. When you talk, it sounds like flowers. You got to understand it from a guy's perspective. When we're in a world, it sounds like sword fighting, right? Well, that's what I do all fucking day, right? I go out with you for dinner and you talk about silly girl stuff and it sounds like flowers. You know how nice that is? My one that got away, right? That she's a researcher and she's one of the smarter women in the country, actually. The one I let get away foolishly because she wasn't feminine enough. You know why? Because she tried to hide her femininity from all the men who would hit on her in the engineering discipline, right? That was my one that got away. I didn't get away. I didn't pursue it. I was going somewhere with that. I really was. It's going somewhere. There's that femininity is all there is. That's really yummy, right? I mean, you can get it, everything else. But when I would talk to her, we could talk about fancy stuff too, as well as flowers, right? Because she still talked like a woman. I don't know what you guys hear when you hear women, but maybe it's because I grew up with all my sisters, right? But I just hear it as, I don't really hear it like I need to pay attention. I hear it as like a tone, like in like white noise, it's like music or something, white noise that you don't really listen. It's just the tone of it is positive or silly or flowery or something like that. I don't know, maybe I just haven't been around too many, my household had too many women.
No, that's normal. There's data on this too.
Sorry?
Well, there's data on this too. People
Yes.
pay more attention to deeper voices.
Yes. So I wanted to close on a single motherhood thing without going off. So we can fix all the incentives. And what are women going to say? They're going to say, well, I don't want you to fix the incentives. And I'm like, well, it's not fair to us. So we can go all the way the Muslim route and make it as unfair to you as you're making it to us. Which do you want? Because it's not like you get it. It's like we're negotiating here, but we don't need you to have a choice.
Women are the bigger enforcers of those Muslim norms.
Mhm.
It'll become that way of the norms that are instilled here as well. Those set the limits for themselves, for sure.
Whatever means you provide them to undermine one another, they'll use that.
Yes. That was fucking harsh. Okay.
Right.
Holy shit. Holy shit. Wow.
So what we want is that the only way they can undermine one another is for actually immoral behavior.
Yes, sir. Which is like, that's the equivalent of girls will be girls. Get them to enforce the limits for grace and elegance and so on.
Yep.
Which is something we already try to do for boys, right? We try to limit their correction of each other to norms.
Yes.
I don't know. We're so I mean, I don't know. I guess you don't get in fights anymore that much. But when I was a kid, we got in fights all the freaking time. And, it was just, I don't know. It's a very self-regulating process.
They don't, I don't think they afford children proximity without adults enough for fights to emerge. I don't know if that's true, but that's
Why do I feel like fights were good for me?
Yeah.
they probably were. You were probably pushing someone's limits and deserved to get struck. Or You were being righteous, like Luke describes being, like you were pursuing a bully. There are reasons to get in fights.
I wouldn't put up with anything.
That's a good
I,
enough.
I was smaller, so I got picked on. So I just wouldn't put up. I mean, the thing you learn is, okay, the minute someone says something, you hit them in the face. That's what you learn, right? I mean, you don't let it get beyond they're in control of the environment. Is that you just, to me, I would just go for the legs, take them down. You know, that was it.
Part of the reason we can't do that anymore is we don't have shared limits, right? We have different competing
That's
interests in close proximity. And so
Yeah.
you can't have somebody that's going to punch you for this thing when your group of people won't ever go to that extreme. You know, I mean,
Well, it's like this shit black guys do where they punch somebody when they're down. I mean,
kicking the head and stuff. right?
if we had
It's-
people down, you had them down, you didn't hit them.
We were looking to maintain honor, not harm.
Right,
Not do harm.
right.
There's a difference.
So
But that's a
we
competing
just-
interest, right? I mean, that's a
Yes.
different.
Yeah, we just didn't do it. I mean, it's an honor thing, right? It's not a harm thing. It's an honor thing. Whereas these black guys, I mean, you see what they do to each other. You got to pull them off. I'm like, I've seen white trash do it, but that's because they've been hanging around with black guys.
Well, it's mobbing behavior, like a monkey troop would do.
Yes,
Meaning it's always asymmetric, it's always blindsided, and there's always numbers on the side
numbers,
of
right?
the assailant.
Right.
It's not a duel. It's never a duel.
And for us, we only allow duels. Like, because I mean, I was joking Billy Hennessy, and he turned blue. He turned the same color as the Twitter logo. It was very cute, really. And like the guys just yanked me off him, but
Right.
nobody interfered
Hey,
until
don't kill him.
no. Oh, I didn't realize it. Right? I was
They
just-
stopped you from crossing a line. You were stopping him from crossing lines, and they stopped you from crossing lines.
right. I can't remember what I can visualize it, but I can't remember what he said to me anymore. But I remember the classroom it was in and everything, and I remember what I was doing. I was saying, "You're going to do that again. You're going to do that again." It was something along those lines, and I kept saying it louder and louder and louder, and I didn't realize he was blue. And so then, I actually
Yeah.
dragged. Oh, go ahead.
I think of honor as a sort of Geneva Convention of interpersonal conflict.
Correct.
Yeah, those fist fights, those even the teasing, and even to some degree the bullying and stuff like that. Those are proxies for nature's feedback. If you step out of line in nature, nature kills you. If you step out of line in our group, we correct you.
Yeah, my attitude is, did anything get broken? Did anybody lose an eye?
Right.
You know, I mean, if it's just little pain and pride, that's fine. Right? I mean, I keep saying this. I got to be friendly with the most dangerous guy in school just because I would fight him all the time. And I would lose, right? I mean, it didn't matter. Right? It's just
I think we should promote adversarial, like
I wouldn't
personal
even take
competition
it.
between boys younger anyhow. You should teach boys throwing, like to throw one another, judo, wrestling, and so on. Like when they're Gumby and throwable.
Yes.
When they're made to fall down, that's when you
Yes.
tossing
When
each other
they're Gumby.
around. Not through development when we do it now. Right? You don't want to break them then. You want them to throw each other early, right? And then learn technique later.
Yep.
Get the instincts for it. And the instincts
Or
for fighting are counterintuitive.
how to hit. Right? You see these little kids that
You
learn
want to do it when they're
how to
small.
fly.
Yeah.
No, it's like they can't, but it's like, okay, that how fast things get settled fast when somebody gets hit in the face. It just over. That was enough. Right? I love the black. Have you seen the black guys in Africa? How they have these fucking amazingly large hands, and they slap the other guy. I don't know if you've seen the video of it, but that's how they do it. There's a thing against closed fist. I don't know what religion it is, but they'll slap the other guy. I think he's amazing. Yes. It's huge. I don't know if you got to see people who've grown their whole life without shoes. They wear sandals. Their feet aren't pushed together like this. They're wide. So
Yes.
big, wide African feet. And the same thing with these hands. like basketball player hands, right? And they just slap each other. It's like, okay, that was a line, right? I mean, it's great. I just don't. Maybe it's I'm back in this part of the country, New England, and there's still that sort of you might get smacked thing going around. I think it's a blue collar, maybe a blue collar thing. Very, very funny. How do we get, what are we trying to, we're talking about, you need to get, I'm trying to. We
Talk about the ability to say no the whole time.
That's what I'm trying to go back to, circle back to the ability to say no, right? So can you tell us any more about what's
a willingness to smack someone is a significant indicator of a
willingness
ability
to say
no. That's all that stuff is too. It's just saying no. So
It's also-
person X says, I'm going to do this, or they're demonstrating I'm going to do this. And the group or the individual says, no, you're not.
The pushing the power distance down, like the removal of the constraint. A lot of people don't hit one another because like someone will call the cops on you and or you will be arrested for assault. That's what will happen. And if it was a dispute that should have happened, the cop should show up and be like, you did the right thing and shake your hand and like give you a
Yeah.
trophy or whatever, and then fuck off. But that's not what happens.
Sheriffs do that, cops don't.
Correct. We need to give the license for cops to do that or remove cops entirely and let people sheriff one another.
Well, the problem is we don't, the thing is sheriffs are elected and they usually got experience. Cops are, they don't get enough training.
No.
They get too much firearms training and they don't actually understand the law. And so, and they don't, I mean, one of the things I notice very clearly in Europe is the focus on dispute resolution, on de-escalation. And that's partly because they have such a population density that they can always have multiple police on scene. The problem with America is we have so much fucking territory and our cops are so expensive. We can't get enough cops on scene to focus on de-escalation. And so, you know, I would love it if we had more cops that were more focused on de-escalation, and that it was sheriffs who were in, you know, because you need cops the way you need soldiers, right? Because you need to cover a lot of territory and bring things that are dangerous to conclusion. But that's different from determining whether an arrest is made, right? That's a different thing. And my view is that that's a grown-up issue. The problem they have is that because there's too much risk to the police officers, they no longer feel safe saying, like a sheriff does because he's elected, they no longer feel safe saying, you know, this is just, I'm not going to throw the people in the system for this. So what they do is they throw everybody in the fucking system. And in order to relieve themselves the responsibility of being in trouble for actually making a judgment. So we put people in place who can't make a judgment. Then we put them in under fear that they're not allowed to make a judgment. And we force everybody the system, which drives up the costs and makes everybody fucking pissed off. When a lot of the time, you know, it's like I'm thinking of one case in particular where I was just trying to do a traffic thing, and some guy's being brought up for smacking another guy in the face. And I'm listening to what happened. It's like, well, he fucking deserved it. I mean, there's no complaint from the other guy. It's from the cop. And my attitude is, if you know, you get in a fist, if you get in a fisticuffs, right? It's usually determinable why this thing happened. And unless if it's willing, like you are willing to be aggress verbally against this guy, and he's willing to physically correct you. I don't know why this is a legal matter. If we did that a lot more, things would go back to being more civil. I mean, I just don't, you just don't talk smack to people. Where was I? I was in a parking lot in New Jersey. I'm not really fond of New Jersey. New Jersey is farther down my list of shitholes than France. So I'm in New Jersey and I pull into a parking space, and apparently somebody had been waiting for the parking space. At least that's the big deal he made to me. I'm like, I never saw you. Why are you pissed at me? I didn't see you. You'd be, you're like, if it was obvious, right? Like you were halfway in and I scooted in or something, but I don't get why you're trying to threaten me. And I was like, the only thing you could say, he's like, I don't understand why you're being unreasonable, right? I'm not going to move my fucking car at this point because he's been an asshole, right? But I'm like, we were pretty much coming to, he actually came out, stalked me after I came out of the store. I'm like, so you want to go at it? Fine, let's fucking go at it. But and then they usually go away, right? They usually go away. But I mean, I don't have that many problem with people. I never have. But I mean, not since high school anyway. High school was a fucking, well, no, it was crazy. It was really grade school. What the fuck is it about grade school in the 60s that we were having fights all the time? I don't fucking know.
I think that the form of judgment that we're talking about here is the expression of responsibility that emerges from decidability.
Say that again. The expression of responsibility.
That
That
emerges from decidability. That's what the form of judgment we're talking about here.
Yes. Could
And
you
it-
elaborate on that?
it
'Cause that was-
fixes
that was
everything.
brilliant. That was brilliant. So just explain that.
Sure. So you know, we're constantly being told not to judge, not to judge, not to judge, and I think that's a fault. That's an error.
Of
Right?
course.
We ought to be judging, but that judging should be tempered by decidability.
Yes.
We should, you know, we should spend our time learning decidability, figuring out how to do decidability, training ourselves in decidability, and then from that emerges good judgment.
Yes.
And that becomes a requirement, a duty of us, is to apply that judgment in our interactions with others.
Mhm.
So it's not just an output of decidability. It is how we express. It's how we responsibly express decidability in our interactions.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I think we need a lot more judgment in the world.
Well, they so systematically took away our ability to maintain norms, high trust norms. It did it on purpose.
Yeah.
They just, it's like they hate us, and I know they hate us. They hate us because we have higher status. We have higher status for not doing things, and they want to have higher status for doing things to get attention. But you can't get over that. I don't know if it's just purely instinctual. In other words, it's part, I mean, it's part of the feminine feminine intuition. So is that just how they are wired and it's unfixable? Do we have to train them, discipline them into, I mean, what do we, it goes back to, how do, I want to solve the fucking problem. Of course, I would have way more fun putting heads on pikes, building skull piles, but I would feel more a sense of accomplishment if we could avoid all that and create a nice little happy, happy universe again of high trust people. And we can only do that if we restore the payment of the costs of norms and enforcement of high trust norms. Just cannot wait. There's no other way to do it. And can't do it unless everybody fucking does, or at least an awful lot of us do it. Me grabbing my wife's backside in a corner in Germany and having this 78-year-old fucking man threaten me with a cane. And I'm like, oops, I'm sorry. What's it, Germany? Switzerland? No. Austria. It was Austria. They're no goddamn fun down there.
Well, some of us don't prefer those limits.
Yeah. And we get the results of not having them, though. I don't know. It might be a cost worth paying.
I'm okay with any, with anything that's reasonably reciprocal. I don't want to make anybody feel right, but it can't be false. Like, I don't understand why grabbing I don't like, I've told you this before, like being in Turkey and being told I can't kiss Amanda in public. Well, I mean, it's local manners, fine. Do I want to live in those manners? No, I'd rather have a limited PDA, displays of affection, appropriate, that celebrate the joy of love between people and joy of the family. I'd rather have that. Okay. They want to celebrate that kind of stuff through different means. Fine. I'd rather live in that place, but if I have to go there, I'm okay with norms as long as I can obey them. Right.
I think it's partly consequence of them having less self-control.
It is that's exactly what it is. They have less self-control.
That's probably not the case in Germany or Austria.
They just show they have they're still more military, so they still have their public respect issue is higher. I mean, I view them as right, but I'm more English in temperament, so I think I put a higher emphasis on play than Germans put a higher emphasis on duty. So I mean, it's just therefore their way. I'm okay with it. I just don't want to be that way. I'm okay with being, I prefer the English model of we have this rigid social hierarchy and we just tease each other a lot. That's my way.
And I like that there's different norms in different places.
Exactly.
I think that's
Well, I
ideal.
mean, that's the right conclusion, right? That's the answer is we should be able to sort to the norms we want to have.
Right.
You know,
Now you guys are celebrating diversity over here.
well, it's diversity, diversity of polities, not diversity in a polity. You're such a dick.
I'm playing with you.
Are you being a dick on purpose?
I believe that taking their frame and beating them with it is the approach.
Yeah, we're fully on board with enforcing diversity. This is what
Yeah.
we mean by it.
Yeah. Yeah, we mean
Separate.
diversity and they mean degeneracy.
Well, globo homo, that globo homo is globo homogenization. That's what it is. That's what they want.
No.
It's just hilarious that it lines up with their
Yeah,
deviancies.
You know, try to explain, you know, you can find an honest woman once in a while who will tell you, well, it's just my emotions. I don't have a lot of control of them, but I realize women have these emotions. The problem is you can't talk to like the left and realize that they don't have any idea that they're crazy. I mean, they have no idea they're actually psychotic, right? That they're
'Cause they-
just children.
they haven't been taught the language that would correspond even to those emotions.
Say that again?
They don't have language that would correspond to those emotions.
Yes.
A lot of it is just inversed.
Yes.
Like they consider sins virtues, vice versa. They may have association of expression of victimhood with positive emotions,
Mhm.
which is why they're happy to do it.
Yeah, inversion is insidious.
In fact, expressing victimhood to them means taking power over someone. And they have no idea that is what's happening.
Right.
Well, I mean, that's the point, right? They
Yes.
just,
Their whole hierarchy is inverted.
They know they can use it to acquire status.
right. It's just, but it's monkeys. And they really are NPCs, right? I mean, that's the whole thing.
Well, yeah, it takes that kind of blindness to this place to jockey in a hierarchy that is dysfunctional and non-correspondent to reality. Sure.
I called them language models before. They have some emotional goal in mind, where they want to move in social hierarchy, where they want to move someone else in social hierarchy.
Mhm.
They just produce a phrase that does that,
Yes.
regardless of the correspondence.
In any system, NPCs run on scripts.
It's fucking terrible.
The question is, are we not, is it dysfunction? Is it poorly handled people during development? Right? Poor training. We can iron out all the questions other than dysfunction and leave only dysfunction behind. And it's not going to be as much as we've got now.
No.
Not close. Not close. You want to iron out the dysfunction, not put it in there. Everything we've done has increased the dysfunction of an individual. And it's measured by, you can measure it in economics. How many drugs they take, right? If they buy entertainment, the data is all there. Where are you replacing community with a global company? Somewhere. Is it everywhere? I see a lot of this dysfunction manifest because they were delivered relative inequality over the screen, over their screens, over their phones. And there's no way to the top of the hierarchy that exists here. They don't even find themselves in the same one. Why a lot of them are fighting to be in at least one that they can see.
Fascinating.
Because it's confusion to want the things that these people want, and then it's immaturity to argue for the things that these people demonstrate wanting, and then it's idiocy on our behalf for giving them the stuff,
Yeah.
right? And it's insanity on the behalf of the polity to be rewarding these people and giving them positions of power. And we've had a pretty good demonstration of them poorly stewarding that power just recently.
Mhm.
Oh, it's a tight case. It's a tight case.
Well, Luke, I was not able to extract from you as much of your genius as I wanted to this session. So just say no.
Just say no. Always position yourself so that you can say no.
And then
That's better
say
than
yes.
just say no. If there's an area in your life and your interactions with others where you don't feel like you're capable of saying no, that's where you need to focus on correction. That's where you're missing something. That's where you need to improve on some competence, some development. Is anywhere where you feel exposed and cannot say no.
Okay. now
If
that's
if people aren't walking out of this whole COVID experience with that, then they've missed an enormous opportunity. Anywhere that exposed, anywhere where you felt vulnerable over those last couple of years, that's where you need to be focusing on, because that's where you can't say no. That means you're not in. That means you're not in a cooperation.
That's different. That particular framing is very powerful. If you're in a position where you feel like you can't say no, something's wrong, right? And so now you have to figure out why you can't say no. And it's very interesting. It's a great way of imposing self-auditing by simply asking a simple question.
Yeah.
By habituating answer that question instead of reactive attempt to satisfy the, or generate non-conflict or satisfy the other person. Very smart. You need something there's obviously something good upstairs in your head.
Hiding behind the makeup.
All right, we've been at this 2.5 hours. I would, if I gotta eat some lunch because I'm starving. But I actually want to continue this thread if Luke wants to another time, and maybe
Sure, absolutely.
I think it was really fascinating. We got a lot of mileage out of it. All right, guys. Thank you. Love you. Anything else?
I think we're good.
All right, guys.
Just so you know, I won't be here next week.
Well, you running off with your stable of women next week?
Oh. I'll be in Ireland.
In Ireland?
Yes.
You gonna meet anybody we know?
Pullman and the other state of exception guys.
Yep.
Break.
Excellent.
All right. Have fun.
Oh.
Love you guys.
Thanks for the talk.